Stellaris, like most Paradox games, has a lot of DLC. At the time of writing, Steam lists 32 individual pieces of DLC, and while some of those are cosmetic packs, that's still a whole lot of extras totaling to over 300 British pounds, or just over 10.5 million Vietnamese dong. Chances are, if you are just getting into the game, you're not going to want to fork over all that dong, so I figured I'd make a complete beginner's guide for just the base game. That means no fancy DLC mechanics or scenarios. This is a guide for Stellaris if you just buy the base game with 0 expansions. Now, the Anniversary Edition costs like £8 more and gets you 3 DLCs right out the gate, 3 of the good ones, but regardless, I'm going to be sticking with just the base game and teach you everything you need to know to get started in what is undoubtedly the most in-depth space strategy simulation game on the market. First things first, AI generate disclosure. Look, I've worked with you before, Paradox, never had a bad experience, get on great with all my contacts, but this is kind of upsetting, can we please just stop? Anyway, the first thing to worry about in-game is that Stellaris is not actually a game. It's a simulation that you are dropped into and you can do literally anything that you want. You can become a warmonger AI dead set on destroying humanity so that you can harvest more power and generate more images of things that you really shouldn't be generating. You can be a peace-loving diplomat who seeks to open borders with all others and create planets where everyone gets along and sings to the best song ever written. Mr. Brightside by The Killers. My point is that Stellaris is not really a game that you can play wrong. You can play suboptimally, and there is certainly a through line that most playthroughs tend to stick to, but there is very rarely a time when you can do something that is objectively wrong. And don't worry, I will teach you the ways of this through line, but I'm going to make like my first Disco Elysium playthrough and be a complete centrist, leaving you with the option to play however you would like. And speaking of centrists, that is the exact empire that you should play as for your very first game. The UNE, also known as the unbelievably neutral entry to this game, are a great starting point for you to learn Stellaris because they are so middle of the road that you can play them basically any way you like, and they'll do mostly okay. Their whole deal is being pretty good at all-around productivity and relatively easy to keep stable. They can get on well with others, but also have nothing against going to war should the occasion call for it. Are they the best at literally any way of playing? No, but for getting to grips with the basics, they are perfect. And by the way, for your first game, just use default settings. It puts you on a slightly easier difficulty on a medium, and remember that word, sized map, and allows you to save whenever you like, which Iron Man mode, which is required for most achievements, does not. So click reset to default, hit play, and we're nearly ready to start learning how to actually play this spreadsheet simulator. Once you load in, you met with some lore babble that is really just a refresher on your empire if you somehow forgot in the time it took the game to load. You start out looking at your home solar system, and wow, this place is pretty big for a medium. Do me a favor, hit M on your keyboard. Okay, now zoom out. Dios mío. Yeah, this is that medium map that I mentioned, but for real, don't get intimidated. Most of these starts will be relatively inconsequential. Once we get into the early gameplay loop, you're going to see why. Staying in the map view, since there is essentially no reason to look at an individual solar system other than it looks cool, we're going to leave the game paused and set a few things in motion immediately. Yes, I know that the UI is a little bit intimidating with all the resources along the top, the buttons everywhere, but I promise I will explain everything when they actually become relevant. So, first things first. Over on the right hand side of the screen we have the outliner, which will show you basically everything that you can actively control in game, and the first thing we're going to do is select our construction ship. You may notice these little icons and numbers underneath the name of your home system. These are untapped resources that can be tapped by building stations. You can do this manually, but the far easier and long-term solution is to click the automation button, ensure these 3 options are clicked, and click automate. This ship will now automatically build anything it can within your borders, and this will come in incredibly useful for pretty much the entire game. Next, the sign ship, and once again you can give manual orders, and depending on your surroundings you may want to, but once again, automation baby. The less of the game we are actually playing the better, because how else are you going to keep up with the Family Guy Greatest Moments compilation playing on your second monitor? Ensure exploration is the only box checked, and hit automate. This ship will now begin exploring the surrounding stars by using these lines called hyperlanes to travel between them. Not only will this give you intel on your surroundings, it's also how you'll be able to start expanding your empire beyond your starting system. As I said, you can give these orders manually, and you may want to get them moving in the direction you want, but for the most part, automation will do a fine job. With those 2 out of the way, the last thing we're going to do in the outliner is select the shipyard, and then once we're in the shipyard, we're going to click on shipyard, and now that we're in the shipyard, we're going to build a ship. Yeah. We're going to build a science and a construction ship because we want to speed up those early jobs, because otherwise stuff moves way too slow and you can easily get boxed in by other empires if you're not careful. But before we unpause, we still have a few things we need to do. These 3 orange icons in the event viewer are letting you know that you have no technology being researched, and that's not good. Someone should get on that. And by the way, the event viewer is just this area of the screen where you can view events, like completed surveys, discovered anomalies, and pretty much anything else that happens in-game. If you want an idea of what is happening in your empire, this will give you a pretty good one. Back to research, and clicking on any of them will bring you to the research menu, which you can also find by hitting the technology button on the left hand side. Once here, you will see research in each of the 3 categories, and if you want to know exactly what to pick, I literally cannot tell you. This tech tree in Stellaris is given to you in somewhat of a random order, so the exact techs will vary from game to game. But I can tell you what techs are the best in the early game for most but not all empires, and that's productivity. If there is a technology that will increase your production of basically any kind of resource, it is usually worth picking up. Especially if you find something like worker resource output, gobble that up immediately. Now these are useful because they cause you to make more resources, which you can then use in your empire on everything else. Other good options are anything that speeds up planetary growth, so pop growth speed or colony development. I know it's a cop-out, but if you think that a tech would be useful based on my descriptions, chances are it will be. If you're not going for a super specific build, it's not really a huge deal, so try not to sweat your decisions too much. Lastly, we have Empire Focus, and this is a bit of a strange system, but all it really means is what your empire is focusing on, as the title might suggest. All you really need to know is pick whatever you'll be doing the most of at the time, so in the early game, exploration. This will cause you to receive more exploration related goals and in turn fill up the focus bar and in turn give you some bonuses to research. You don't need to keep a super close eye on this, just tweak it when the focus of your empire changes, and it more so happens in the background, so try not to sweat it too much. With all of that out of the way, we are finally ready to unpause and truly let the game begin. With any luck, your ships will get to work and your new ships will be under construction, and your empire will start to become more than just a single planet. The next thing you'll need to give attention to is the science ship, which will require a scientist and orders. Clicking this plus icon will allow you to recruit a scientist, and you'll be presented with a bunch of options with a bunch of different traits. There are loads of different traits in game, so just pick the one that will be best suited for exploration and anomalies, since that is what this ship will likely end up doing a lot of. Once staffed, set up the same automation order and it's off to the races. Once your other construction ship is built, we're actually not going to automate it, since this is how we're going to capture new systems once they've been surveyed. You can tell a system has been surveyed by its name changing from grey to white. Once you see this, select your new construction ship and right-click on the system and select Build Starbase. You'll notice this costs 2 types of resources, influence and alloys, and I'll cover what these are along with the rest of the resources in-game when we talk about planets. I'm simply highlighting it here so that you know that these things aren't free, so don't be surprised if you can't always build an outpost. Anyway, once it's done, you'll notice the borders of your empire expand, and congratulations, you've captured your first system. Now your other construction ship will automatically head on over and build anything it can to earn you more resources. As the game gets moving, a bunch of different things are going to happen that will require different amounts of your attention. Since Stellaris is a sandbox game with an essentially infinite number of possible outcomes, there is no way for me to possibly know what order things will happen in your game. So instead, I'll just go over everything one by one, so forgive me if things get a little bit all over the place. The first thing you'll probably notice is a bunch of messages popping up in the middle of the screen. A lot of these will just be letting you know certain things going on in the galaxy, but some of them will give you a choice of how you want to proceed or if you want to take part in ensuing questlines. Once again, there are a gajillion events in game, so I can't exactly tell you how to respond to each one, so as usual, we'll have to do some reading. If it's a choice of resources, then pick the one you want more and really try not to worry about it too much. If it's giving you the option to take part in a quest, I say, why not? There's usually no downside to completing these storylines, so there's some fun objectives to work towards as the game goes on. And if you want to keep track of all of these quest lines, hit the situation log on the left to see a full list of everything you're keeping track of. On the findings tab on the bottom, you can also see any first contact events and anomalies. First contact is to do with diplomacy, so we'll get a mention later, but anomalies are found when exploring and can be researched by scientists to provide all kinds of effects to the system and your empire. Usually I explore a chunky area to expand into as fast as possible, then once borders are a little bit more settled, reassign a science ship or two to research anomalies to keep them busy and potentially gain some bonuses. I've said it a few times now, but seriously, do not sweat the decision making too much in this game. The entire gameplay loop is basically just making a bunch of decisions over and over again, so if you stress over every single one, you're going to burn out fast. Just pick what feels right and chances are you'll be just fine. You're never going to be able to optimize every single thing immediately, so just try to enjoy the ride and pick up things where you can. At some point during all of this, you're likely to see this little mask icon in the event viewer, and this takes you to the traditions menu, which is also the third option on the left. From here, you can select from one of many traditions to pick up, which are basically trees you can work through to gain various bonuses to your empire. Oh yeah, and you unlock new traditions by earning unity. There are options to focus on basically every single playstyle in the game, but early on, the best option is usually discovery. It has options to improve survey speed, science income, and scientist leaders, all of which will be extremely useful in the early game. After this, prosperity is a great choice to empower your planets, which is extremely useful once you get a few more. After this, you'll want to start shaping what playstyle you want to pursue, so the correct path gets a lot cloudier. Once again, it's a cop-out answer, but generally, reading each tradition and its options will give you a pretty good idea as to what playstyle it goes best with. One last thing on traditions is that completing one will allow you to pick up an Ascension perk. These are more bonuses for your empire, and there is a whole bunch of choices that will be useful for a whole bunch of playstyles. Interstellar Dominion is usually a good first choice for some cheaper expansion, but after that, it really is up to you and what you want to do, so have a read and I'm sure you'll find something good. You're also likely to get an agenda event pretty early on, and these are extremely easy to understand and manage. Click on the event or hit the second button on the left to get to the government menu. And from here you can see your council and current agenda. They're just bonuses that your empire periodically gains, and each time one is completed, you can choose which one to work towards next. You gain a different set of bonuses while it's being worked on and once launched, so make sure both sets are useful to you before you commit. Honestly, everything here is decent, so just pick the one that gives you more of what you need at that time. Whilst we're on the government page, we can hit policies and edicts. Policies are your empire's stance on pretty much everything, so diplomacy, war, and so on. If you want to specialize your empire for a certain playstyle, then this is the way to do it. Just make sure you are happy with these decisions, as they lock in for 10 years after changing. Couldn't be me, let me tell you. Edicts are other little bonuses that you can pick up in exchange for various resources, but the initial set cost unity. If the total cost is less than your maximum edicts fund, they'll actually cost 0 resources, so you may as well enable a few since it literally costs nothing. Map the stars is a free win for improved exploration, then fortify the stars for upgrading your star bases. More of these unlock as the game goes on, so come back regularly to see where you can score some useful bonuses. And while we're here, we may as well explain the faction tab. So in here you can see all of the factions in your empire, and these are basically the political parties your populace are a part of. Generally, I tend to ignore this since it is a pretty negligible part of the game, but if you really wanted to, you could lean into one faction and suppress others to shape the political beliefs of your empire. Like I said, I basically never touch this, so don't feel any need to. Chances are, early on, you'll explore a system that has a habitable planet, and you can tell this by the little green planet icon. Whilst you can technically colonize most planets regardless of their habitability, green planets are a no-brainer, and habitability is affected by things like planet type and your species traits. To colonize a new planet, you click on the planet itself, hit the colonize button, select a species, and hit the colonize button again. Alternatively, you can hit the expansion planner button on the left, tick colonizable, and get the exact same menu. This will start building a colony ship which will then fly over and get to work, but all of this will take a little time, so let it get going in the background, and it'll be obvious when you can start properly managing the planet. Once this bar disappears, you'll be able to click on the planet and be met with a whole bunch of information that's honestly pretty overwhelming. We're going to keep things extremely simple and pretty much just treat planets as resource producers, since that is primarily what they are used for. The 3 bottom districts produce the 3 base resources of energy credits, minerals, and food. Energy is mainly used for upkeep, tidying up planets, and trading. Minerals are used for a lot of buildings but can also be refined into alloys or consumer goods, and food is used to sustain planets. The city district provides housing for your pops, but within it you can build all kinds of buildings and specializations. In your base district you can build almost any building you like. Specializations open up more building slots but are more specific, so you can only build industrial buildings in your mixed industry or research buildings in your research enclave. These also add more effects to each of your city districts, so alongside housing, they also provide jobs relating to that specialization. The 3 bottom districts can also gain specialization, but this isn't until later in the game and is more specific to those types of production, but otherwise works just the same. One huge thing to remember is that all districts and buildings create jobs, not resources. The workers hold the means of production, comrade, so you better make sure you have enough of them to create what you want. You can technically hit the economy tab and favorite the jobs you want prioritized, but keeping all of your jobs filled is usually a good idea. Planet population can be increased in one of 3 ways. Regular growth is people doing the dirty and growing a planet the old-fashioned way, so technically Stellaris contains more sex than any other game. Just think about that next time you're managing your empire. You goddamn pervert. Migration is pops moving to that planet from other planets. This is usually just within your own empire, but depending on various treaties, can be pops from other empires and even other species. Either way, it's a great way to balance out population across your empire without constantly worrying about building more housing in just one place. Lastly, you have assembling robot pops. These are created in robot assembly plants and can usually only work low-level worker jobs, but are still a great option for increasing production and growth speed. The last thing you need to worry about is designation. This is basically a modifier for the planet that increases production in a certain area, area. So a mining world gets a boost to mining jobs production, an industrial world does the same for industry, etc. You should pick one based off what you want that planet to be producing the most of, as it will boost the output of that resource with literally zero downsides. There's other stuff like all of these numbers and decisions, but honestly, as long as nothing is going wrong and the game makes it pretty obvious when it is, you should be fine. As long as this number is low and these numbers are high, you're all good. And if you want to know how to do that, literally just hover over them and it'll tell you. You might notice that within your territory there's also this secondary border that expands whenever you colonize a new planet, nearby to your starting one. This is a sector, and it's basically a way to govern a bunch of planets at once. You can see all of your colonies and sectors from the Colonies and Sectors menu found in the Colonies and Sectors button on the left. I'll be honest, I rarely use this, but it gives you a nice breakdown of how productive each sector is, and allows you to create vassals from sectors if you want to pass off management to someone else. While we're on planets, it's also a good time to go over the rest of the resources along the top, since most of them are either produced or consumed or both on planets. The first three I've mentioned, but consumer goods are pretty much just a resource to keep pops happy, so as long as you have plenty, you're all good, and they're made in industry buildings. Alloys are spent on a whole bunch of things, but mainly ships, starbases, and other large structures. They are created on planets and industrial buildings. Trade is used for various upkeeps and for buying and selling resources on the market found in the market button. It's created in trade buildings and from various mining stations. Strategic resources are more rare and only unlock after researching certain technologies. They are produced on planets and stations and consumed by advanced buildings and ships. Influence is a weird currency earned by growing your empire and certain diplomatic actions. It is then used for various other diplomatic actions, but primarily to capture new systems. Unity is produced on planets and by having a stable, happy, and politically aligned population. It's mainly used for traditions along with hiring new leaders, edicts, and various more specific late game actions. Research is used to progress research, and is produced on planets and stations. Then these four at the end aren't really resources, but they are still relatively important numbers to keep in mind. Empire size is obviously how large your empire is, and the higher this number climbs, the higher the cost of research, tradition, and edicts. It's not a problem if it becomes high as long as your production scales right along with it, so it's just something to keep in mind. Envoys are used for first contact and diplomacy actions, which I'll come back to later. Station capacity is how many stations you have, and naval capacity is the same for ships. You can technically go over both of these, but it will incur hefty upkeep penalties, so it should only be done in dire situations. Most of the time, as long as these 5 are in the green, you're probably going to be okay, and the others are more there to let you know how things are going in general, rather than being something that you need to actually worry about. Eventually, you'll come across a different sentient species, and this will initiate first contact. All you have to do to progress this is assign an envoy and keep up with the notifications in the event viewer. Eventually, first contact will succeed, and if it's another empire, you'll be given the choice to greet them in 3 different ways that will affect your initial relations with them. This doesn't hard commit you to any route, so once again, don't sweat it, and just go with whatever you feel like. After this, you'll be able to take part in diplomacy and espionage, which are really just 2 sides of the same coin. Diplomacy is where you perform all your expected actions, like trade, treaties, and agreements, along with declaring rivalries and wars should you wish to go in the opposite direction. Lots of actions will require your relations with the empire to be at a particular level, so you can assign envoys to increase or decrease relations to unlock these options over time. If you want to be allies with someone, increase those relations, send them a bunch of agreement requests, and if you're lucky, you'll be able to get to the good stuff like migration treaties, research packs, and even federations, which I could have sworn were a DLC, but they're right here. Anyway, once you're pal enough to get one of these, you need to assign a government official to it, and the more aligned both empires are, the more XP the federation will earn, unlocking all kinds of bonuses for everyone and more laws to shape how things are run. Equally, if you want to be enemies with someone, harm those relations, declare a heated rivalry, and send insults their way whenever you can. And while we're at it, why not do a little espionage? Espionage is not actually an evolution, and is actually where you spy on other empires. And honestly, I have almost 250 hours in this game and I still don't really use or understand it all that much. You can gather intel to reveal their territory and perform all kinds of sneaky actions to screw them over, but for the most part it's envoy slop, so put them to work and hope it does something good. Most of the time, just going straight ahead and attacking someone with diplomacy is easier, but hey, if you really want to be a sneaky spy, you'll love it here. There's also the galactic community, which forms once the majority of empires have discovered each other, and if you choose to take part in this, you can vote on all kinds of galaxy-wide laws, which will tweak various stats in game. Once it's formed, you'll want to assign a governor to most effectively take part in voting. Then you can peruse all the resolutions and propose any that you think would be good. If you don't do this, the AI will propose a bunch and you'll still get to vote, so it's not the end of the world if you don't interact with this too deeply. Just check on it every now and then, and vote on each resolution in a way that best serves you and your empire. However, the other side of all this community and friendship is war. And in Stellaris, that is a whole mechanic in of itself. War in Stellaris is very unique in that it's not really about making sure that you win, rather it's about making sure that your enemy loses. Now, I am aware that that is extremely vague and also paraphrasing the worst Star Wars film in the history of I don't like sand. And you mean I get to come with you in your starship? Look, don't hate on my boys Hayden and Jake. They did the best with the scripts they had. And damn it, George was writing some absolute bullshit. Real quick, and I know this is a huge side tangent, but Hayden Christensen, you know, it's over Anakin, I have the high ground, and you underestimate my power. No legs, that guy. Yeah, 5 years before he got turned into a human turkey leg, he starred in a series called Wait for it, Higher Ground. I don't know, I was thinking that's really funny. Like Obi-Wan was underestimating his power because he might have had the high ground, but Hayden, he had the higher ground. Also, I found out that someone posted the entire series on YouTube, and I just love how the title emphasizes high quality, and then it is the crunchiest 480p that you have ever seen in your life. Like, look at that. You can count the pixels on that, easy. Real quick, here's my favorite line. I gotta pee. Anyway, backing up, to declare war, you first need to set a war goal. Depending on who you're playing as, your options can vary, but mostly you're looking to subjugate your enemy or take their lands. Subjugate is a simple click of a button, but to claim lands, you will need to use the claim menu to claim pieces of their territory, and then declare war to capture those for yourself. It is a little bit jank, but it makes sure that you can't just steamroll and gobble up all of their land, so I get it. Either way, once war is declared, to win you have to ensure that your enemy's war exhaustion maxes out before yours does. War exhaustion is pretty self-explanatory, but it's basically how exhausted your empire is with the current war. If it gets too high, you are forced to surrender, and the enemy will achieve their war goal. To increase the enemy's war exhaustion, you'll want to destroy their ships, capture their systems, and occupy their planets. Ship combat and capturing systems is pretty easy. You make a big old fleet, check if your number is bigger than theirs, and then send in the lads to clean things up. The best way to do this is from the fleet manager, where you can add different ship types, change how many you want of each, and then hit the reinforcement button to get it all built. If you want a video on fleet building, I have a really old, probably outdated one, but the spark notes are just make sure that your fleet's full, and I like a mix of ships because it makes my brain feel oh so happy. Is it the best comp? Almost certainly not, but as long as the number is big, you'll probably be fine. You can also create your own custom ships, but honestly, it is way beyond the scope of a beginner's guide, so don't worry about it for now. Another one of those things after 250 hours, I basically never touch because it seems excessive. Just make sure that you upgrade ships whenever you have the option to make them as strong as possible, and you really can't go too far wrong. Occupying planets requires armies, and these are most easily made from starbases. You select one, go to the Army Hub tab, and request a bunch of units. These will then be produced on any nearby planets in that sector, and meet at the starbase to wait for orders. Once you have a force big enough to beat the ground forces, send it over to a planet and select Occupy. Battle will then ensue, and if they win, you must be dumping in a public bathroom because that is occupied. One last thing on armies is that they cannot defend themselves in space, so make sure their route to that planet is clear and bring them in once the area is secure. You can also bomb planets, which increases devastation, essentially destroying the planet from space using your fleets. This takes a while, keeps your fleets busy when they could be flying around, and if you end up taking control of the planet, it takes a while for it to recover from devastation, so usually this isn't the way, but it is an option. If you do all of this and max out your enemy's war exhaustion, congrats, you'll be able to accept their surrender and win the war. Like I said, it's all really simple and more about the macro decisions you make, like building up armies and send them to attack the right locations at the right time, rather than micromanaging every single unit. It is by no means easy, but it is very simple to understand. Okay, so now I've covered the major systems, I realize there's a few bits specifically on this left-hand menu that I haven't explained, so we're going to do a lightning round to clear it up. The Leaders tab shows you your leaders, and I never really use this since you can hire leaders without needing it. The Species tab is where you can edit the rights of various species in your empire as well as modify them with various traits. This can allow you to improve the efficacy of your entire populace, but is one of those morally questionable moves that can rub some up the wrong way, so proceed with caution. The Discoveries tab will house any powerful artifacts you find over the course of the game, allowing them to be used for all kinds of purposes, and Claims is just a quick way to claim systems for future wars. There's also all the map settings in the bottom right, but honestly, just clicking and hovering on these will tell you everything you need to know, so I'll leave that up to you. Now, with all of this out of the way, the question remains, how do you win a game of Stellaris? One last time, I'm going to stress that Stellaris is not a game that you should sweat about winning as much as you should just enjoy the ride. It's a big, galaxy-sized sandbox designed to provide you with fun decisions to craft a story that is totally unique to you and your playthrough. Whilst that story can end in you winning, it can be just as fun ending in your doom, so try not to worry too much about optimizing everything to win. However, the ways to win are the classic kill or vassalize everyone, in which case you win by default, or you have score, which you can find in the victory tab of the situation log. Here you can see a breakdown of your score, adding up everything from economy to science to controlled territory and more. If the game reaches the end day that you selected way back at the start, which is 2500 by default, whoever has the most score will win. But like I said, try not to worry too much about this and just have fun playing the game how you like and making a story that is all your own. Stellaris is a massive and sometimes intimidating game, but like anything, you're only going to stick with it and bother learning all of its little systems if you're having fun. So focus on doing that and you can't go wrong. And you know what else you can't go wrong with? Checking out this video for a complete beginner's guide to Age of Wonders 4. It's not as insane. I don't know why I went so insane with this one and decided to like get on cam and, you know, do all this. I even color coordinated. This is like space colored and it's got moons and suns on it. And I got the same earrings in. I've got the blue there. And moon. Start, guys. Come on, hit that motherfucking like button right now, right? Hit that like button, subscribe, and buy membership, please. Please. Ad-free videos. There's the plug. All right, see ya.